Hi, folks. I hope this finds everyone well and healthy. It's been a little while since I've done a new demo video for Illuminated Cloud. That's not for lack of progress on the product. Actually, there have been continued weekly releases. My primary focus has been on bug fixes, stability, performance, accommodating for changes to the underlying technologies. That may be Salesforce platform releases. It may be Salesforce CLI changes and enhancements. It may be changes to the JetBrains product suite. But that's not to say that there haven't been enhancements to the product and even new features kind of intermingled with those more maintenance and performance and accommodation oriented releases. And so what I wanted to do in this video is just show a little bit of a grab bag of some of the recent enhancements, and some actually not so recent. I'll explain as I demonstrate those features. But I really wanted to show just a variety of features around code coverage, anonymous apex, some changes to the offline symbol table structure, a fairly significant new JetBrains enhancement for team collaboration and collaborative development, things like that. So I'll just go ahead and dive in. The other preface I want to give real quick, though, is that I'm not using one of my standard demo projects. I'm actually using the nonprofit starter pack for this because it actually demonstrates some of these enhancements and changes quite nicely. And so we'll dive into those as we get there. But just wanted to explain that I'm using one of the larger open source projects out there as the basis for demonstrating these features. Okay, so why don't we jump in real quick? So the first thing I want to show is a set of enhancements to Apex code coverage analysis that can help with more detailed analysis of your coverage, how it is driven by your test code, your verification harness, and how you can create actionable decisions based on information provided by these tools. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and open up an existing coverage suite. Now I'll point out that I produced this coverage suite just by running all tests with coverage here. It just, for this particular project, a very large project, it can take a long time to do that. So I preceded this coverage, as you can see yesterday. I'll just go ahead and show that. It's going to fetch the aggregate level coverage information from the organization and show it. Now, one thing I will do is start by saying something that most of you already know who've used the tool and have used its coverage capabilities. The information shows up in a few different ways in a few different forms. You have your bird's eye view over here in the coverage tool window showing all the different classes in a flat list and their respective coverage. Then you have in the gutter line level information about what's covered. And if we scroll down a little bit, some things that aren't, you can see the red at the bottom there. And then over in the project view, you can see that you get similar information to what you get over here, but more aligned along your project structure and rolled up along your project directory structure so that you can see for a given directory structure, maybe you've modularized your code, the aggregate numbers for those modules. So what if you want to do a slightly different form of analysis? Let's say that we're at almost 85% here, which is certainly admirable for a project of this size. And I think it's actually a little bit higher because I did have some failed tests in this test run and didn't look into those. But let's say that we wanted to find tests, or we want to find product classes for which we either don't have coverage or we have low coverage, and we would get the best bang for the buck to raise it. Let's say that we had an organizational goal of reaching 90% code coverage and maintaining that. So I can now sort by this, either one of the columns, ascending or descending. So I've done an ascending sort on coverage percentage, and I can see now some opportunities for improvement. Now, 4 lines of code, 2 lines of code, 10, those probably aren't going to get me very far. 18 out of 159, that's a pretty good opportunity. 73 out of 334, that's a good opportunity. These are things that we can now dole out to the team and have individuals go and work on building up the test suite, the test harness for these particular product classes so that we get better aggregate coverage, but we also get a better and more accurate test harness for our product logic. So that's one way that you can do some additional analysis just by sorting, as simple as it is. Another way, if we come over here, is let's say I've got this particular line of code and I want to understand which, this is product code, and we can see that it's covered because it's green in the gutter, but I want to understand which parts of my test suite actually drove this coverage, which parts, said a little differently, actually provide verification for this particular line of code. Because the goal is not a coverage number, the goal is proper verification, and you'll get the coverage numbers automatically if you get proper verification. And so what we can do now is click in the gutter And there is an option here called Show Test Covering Line. And I can click that, and it's going to fetch now line level detailed information about this particular line of code. And I can see that there were 12 test methods that ended up driving logic that got to this particular line of code. And if I want to see that in a more stable and repeatable or something I can return to since, I can go ahead and pin that as a find window. And now I can go through the various test methods and take a look at them. And what I may be looking for example, would be, do I have coverage being driven by my dedicated test suite, unit test suite for this particular class, this product class, or am I getting it by accident by some other test methods and test suites, in which case, if those were to change or be refactored, unknowingly, I might lose coverage here. So it allows you to do that type of correlating analysis between individual lines of code and the tests that actually exercise those lines of code. All right, so let's put that away for a moment, and let's go back over here to our coverage view. And one other thing before I dive into this next thing I want to show is the coverage view is shown automatically whenever you do run tests with coverage. You may be doing that from the context menu iteratively as you're watching how you're building up your coverage. You may not want this to pop up and steal focus and break your workflow. If that's the case, you can actually go into settings now, or preferences on the Mac, and go into build execution deployment and go into coverage, and you can disable this activate coverage view setting. And what will happen is the coverage view will still be docked and updated. It just won't be activated, won't be opened up, and won't steal focus within the IDE. So whatever fits your workflow best, you now have the option to either show or not show that whenever you execute tests with coverage. So coming back over here to these coverage results, excuse me, coming back over here to these coverage results, let's say that we still want to do the analysis for this organizational goal of 90% or higher aggregate code coverage. And obviously what I'm looking at here is ephemeral. You know, I need to have the coverage view open to see this. I need to have my IDE open. I need to have pointed an org where I've run tests. We can take a snapshot of that can actually be shared, can be put into a Jira ticket that's reflecting how we're going to enhance code coverage percentages. So I can go ahead and generate this coverage report. I'm going to go ahead and have it open in a browser immediately upon it being generated. So it's going to generate that, and it's going to give me a really nice offline or externalized view of this. Now, this project has a namespace in PSP. If it didn't, you would see default here. And I can see the breakdown according to classes and triggers and their respective coverage. So I have some classes with no coverage. I have some triggers with no coverage, one of them actually. And then I can see my line level information that I saw on the other. And I can drill in and take a look at the individual classes. This one's got 92.1%. If I want to look, I can see all the green, but I can see some red. The point is same information, but now it's available in an externalized form. You can use as a baseline as you dole out the work for building up your validation suite. You can even take new snapshots. You can diff those because of course this is just HTML, and the rendered output of HTML can be diffed, things like that. So it's just a nice way to understand your code coverage and be able to share it with your team and create an action plan. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that, but create a strategy for working against that. All right, so let's go back over here. So that was one thing I wanted to show. Let's go ahead and move on to another area real quick, other than coverage. I'm going to go ahead and close this just to remove some of this information, go to Anonymous Apex. So in the Anonymous Apex tool window in Illuminated Cloud, when you execute a script, it echoes the script in the execution status, and then it shows the log. I was hearing from some people, understandably, that this is redundant, and sometimes you can't immediately see what's going on. You can't really see the log. There's now a way to disable that. Now it's enabled by default for consistency with the previous behavior, but if you uncheck this, and it will be unchecked for your user across all your projects going forward. It's not something that's shared with your team automatically. It's part of your workspace configuration. But if you uncheck this and execute, it'll just show the log. Now, if there are issues, so let's just say, this and create an issue, it'll show that automatically. But when things go well and you execute, it'll just show the log. A minor thing, but I think it's one of those things that will help people who just immediately want to go in and see the log from Anonymous Apex execution, potentially just come in here and copy it out into another area. The same things also hold. You can still do tree-based analysis, things like that. Small, but probably important thing to some people. Okay, next enhancement. I mentioned we're in the NPSP project for a particular reason. Most people these days for presentation tier development in Salesforce are probably doing Lightning Web Components. Some people are probably still doing Aura or some combination of Aura and LWC as they do the migration. There are probably still quite a few people doing Visualforce because that was the presentation tier framework for Salesforce development for quite a while. And there's probably existing significant investments in it. Additionally, I know a lot of people were using it effectively as a container for single page application frameworks with a binding to the Salesforce ecosystem. The point is that there's a feature of Visualforce that allows you to reference Visualforce components, both standard components and custom components in Apex and do more dynamic things with them. Instantiate them, add them to other components, do obviously compositional UI layout more dynamically than you can or can easily in markup. And Illuminated Cloud didn't traditionally have support for this, but now it actually has full support for it. We can see the various component namespaces in the components. We can see that when we instantiate a component, it understands the various component attributes and their data types, things like that. And that's true also for custom components. We can see it knows about the custom components and their attributes. So the point is that Illuminated Cloud now has a first-class support for Visualforce, dynamic Visualforce development in Apex. So for those that already have an investment here, it's unlikely that people will be doing this new going forward, but for those that have an investment here, Illuminated Cloud now will properly handle that. You won't see a lot of red, unresolvable references. You'll get nice code completion and things like that when you're working with these in Apex. Okay, here's one other thing that I don't think people have necessarily seen. It is a kind of quick fix, effectively, not necessarily when something's broken, but for parameters. If I want to take parameters or arguments and put them on separate lines, I can do that. A lot of people like to see the parameters like that when they start overflowing a right margin or getting long. All I have to do is hit Alt-Enter or on the Mac Opt-Enter, and it presents that. And if I want to instead go to a single line, the converse is also available. So there's another small enhancement, but something that people may find useful. And like I said, the same thing holds whenever you have a comma separated list. I can do the exact same thing here. It'll put arguments on separate lines, or I can put them back on the same line. So call arguments or formal parameters, same options available. All right, I'd mentioned some changes to the excuse me, offline symbol table. If we take a look at, for example, custom object here, let's just go to account. Like the account object, what we'll see here is that there are stub Apex classes in the OST for all SObjects, whether they're system SObjects or custom SObjects, whether they're part of your project or they come from installed managed packages. And traditionally, those that are reported without a namespace, which would be the system SObjects and any custom SObjects in a non-namespace project that don't come from a namespace managed package or a package, those would end up in the root of the generated offline symbol table. Now you can see they do not now. They would basically be from here down. Those actually do have a namespace. They exist in the schema namespace. They're referenced differently, schema dot instead of schema underscore underscore, things like that. They're definitely kind of unique beasts, but they do exist in that namespace. And for a specific reason, they've been relocated into here. This is going to require regeneration of your OSTs once you upgrade to 2.1.7.2 or higher. But and the issue that they solve is one that has to do with ambiguity of some names within the Salesforce system types. So that can be system SObjects, system classes, system namespaces. Site is a perfect example. There's a site namespace. There's a site utility class in the implicit system namespace. Implicit meaning you don't have to say system.site. You can just say site. And there is a site SObject, again, in the implicit schema namespace. So again, you don't have to say schema.site. You can just say site. And what does this mean? Well, this means that if I say site dot, you don't really know what that means until you further qualify that, until there's more context. We can see that there are SObject fields. If we scroll down, we can see that there are utility methods from the utility class. And if I scroll down even further, we can see that there are types from the site namespace. And in order to make this unambiguous, one of the first things that needed to happen is things needed to be organized appropriately. And that meant taking these SObjects that are reported without a namespace and putting them into the schema namespace, since that's actually where they live. You'll need to regenerate your OST. Illuminated Cloud will prompt you for this. And when it does, you should go ahead and update it. The prompt traditionally would say, you have an out-of-date offline symbol table. Now it will actually say why. In this case, it'll say, SObjects have been reorganized in the schema namespace, and this is a required regeneration. Meaning if you don't, you're going to get errors in your editor for references to these system types. There may be other ones. For example, when Summer 21 comes out, it will say that you need to regenerate because Summer 21 is out, and that is recommended but not required. You may not see any errors. You may be using an older API version, but if you want to take advantage of Summer 21, you need to go ahead and regenerate. The point is it gives more context about why your OST is considered out of date. Okay, one more thing I want to show. This is not an Illuminated Cloud enhancement, but a JetBrains enhancement. If you're using one of the commercial JetBrains IDEs, and this is important for those of us, which is probably many of us, who are now working in a distributed team environment as we are doing remote work versus in-office work, and that may continue for a lot of people going forward. It is important to have a tool that allows us to collaborate effectively. And JetBrains has introduced a new tool, a new feature called Code With Me, and it is collaborative development. And that may mean pair programming or swarm programming. It may mean peer review. Whatever that means for your particular team, your particular group, whatever it happens to be, there is now a tool that can facilitate collaborative development built directly in the IDE. You can just share your IDE. And this is not a screen share. It is if you say read only, but this is not just a screen share. It's more like the way that Google Docs and Google Sheets and things like that work, in that you can have multiple team members actually collaboratively working in the same project. They don't even have to have that project locally. They effectively get access to it, and everybody can collaborate. I won't go into all the details here. There's actually a lot more information in that in JetBrains' own documentation on the feature. But the point is this is a tool for the times. And I think that it's worth looking into if you do distributed or collaborative development, review, whatever it happens to be at all. So definitely take a look at that. So anyways, that's what I wanted to show. Like I said, it was kind of a grab bag. Kind of went on for a while, but hopefully for those of you that had these features just kind of slip under the radar, under your notice, it brings them to your attention, and hopefully you'll find them useful. I think there's some things here that will really help with understanding, analysis, collaboration, things like that. And otherwise, just to reiterate what I said at the beginning, I hope everybody is staying healthy and safe. And I also hope that in the relatively near future, we all get an opportunity to safely get back together and enjoy each other's company. All right, take care.